I think we're live. I can't see my little bar. Yeah, okay, we're live. Cool. We are live and back with another episode of the Break Even Brothers podcast. Probably the last episode for the year 2025, I think, Brad. I think we're planning to, after this one, take a little bit of a hiatus for the holidays, and then probably won't release another one until 2026. So,
Yeah,
first of all, what a year it's been.
I know.
And yeah, pretty exciting.
Yeah, maybe in 2026 we need a new theme song. I know we have one right
Ooh.
now, and when Ben created it, I was like, that is a jingle jangle. But maybe 2026 we need a little bit of a change up, kind of refresh on the Break Even Brother assets, so to speak. That would be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. And it's funny because I made that with AI, no shocker, if you've heard it. And it's from Suno AI, but like it's like a subscription I pay for. I think it's like $10 a month. But in order to use it for commercial like applications, you have to like keep your license active. Because otherwise I would just download the
Oh,
song and then cancel my subscription. So they got a nice little fish hook in me
wait,
there.
so you're paying for it right now?
Pay for right now, yeah. Yeah.
Wow,
I mean, my
okay.
kids, they like to make like stupid songs about the dogs, like and you can like make it's actually a cool site. I don't know if we've ever talked about it on this podcast, but yeah, you can make like different kinds of songs and stuff like that. So
So it's kind of an honor system.
I think so. Yeah, I don't think they have any way to test it. I mean, we could try and find out and see if I could cancel my subscription and keep the song on the pod. But yeah, I just remember going through probably a couple months ago, being like, oh, I don't want to use this anymore. But I was like, well, wait, like what happens to the songs that we use,
Interesting.
for the pod? So
There's a JavaScript charting library called HighCharts that is also a paid JavaScript package. And I used it when I was first building out Split My Expenses. And I thought, this is so nice, but it's also that honor system of it's free and or like not open source, maybe open source, but free to use non-commercially. But if you use it commercially, you have to pay. And I thought, how would they ever find me? So
yeah.
I used it and I thought, you know what? I want my site to actually grow. So I'm taking that off. So then I went to, I think it was like Chart.js, but yeah, it kind of sounds similar of like if you're using it in the commercial context, you have to pay money, which I assume a lot of people do, honestly.
Yeah, they settled some huge lawsuit too with I think Warner Brother Music or something like that, or Warner Music. I can't remember what it was, but because they're basically you could like make a copy of Billie Jean almost, and like it was like too close to like the real thing.
I see. That's
So,
crazy.
yeah, yeah.
Nice.
So anywho,
Well,
yeah, go for it.
yeah, this has been a big year. And I think when 2025 started, it was the quote unquote year of the agents. And honestly, I feel like that has pretty much been true. I don't know what 2026 will hold, but one thing that I've seen recently from Anthropic, and I think a lot of the other leading AI labs, is the introduction of skills. So I think Claude came out with skills a few months ago, but to be completely honest, it went under my radar. I wasn't super excited when it came out. Didn't see a ton of people pick it up. And I think there was a little bit of rough support in the beginning, kind of akin to MCP servers when it came out. Definitely has a lot of hype and buzz, but once that initial few month period gets kind of polished over, then it's really good. And so I think skills is a topic I want to talk to you about because I'm excited about it, but I'm also confused about it. And I've used it a little bit, but for people who aren't aware, we have, the MCP layer, which is tools, which you can call from an MCP server. These tools that are invoked can be a remote server, local server, etc. But what skills are just markdown files that describe a capability. So kind of when you're writing a prompt, you're writing a ton of context. You can think of skills being individual text files that describe to an agent how to perform a task. I think oftentimes in these tutorial videos, they talk about, would you rather have a really smart mathematician doing your taxes? Or would you rather have, a CPA doing your taxes? And they bring that up because AI models are really smart now, but they don't know the context of that domain. And so they have skills which brings kind of that domain knowledge to the agent. And I think the big lever that Anthropic has is creating kind of their skills marketplace or plugin marketplace to allow these skills to be shared and reused within companies publicly, et cetera. So it creates kind of this new agentic harness that's kind of similar to MCP, but kind of not. So we're in a new world now. I don't know if this will take over. I don't know if it'll fizzle out, but I am seeing a lot of attention in this area.
Yeah, I think it's it sounds a lot like to me like kind of the tool calling agent sort of paradigm too, where it's like you have a certain way that you want to have things done, and it's not just like free form. Like there's a certain like domain or context that the agent needs to have in order to accomplish that task. And so you're basically preloading it, with that context, or you're kind of giving it instructions on, this is what I need when I want to extract the PDF. This is what I want it to come back as. So it seems to me like, again, I haven't used them extensively, but I have heard of people using them, and seem like they've gotten popular within the Claude community. But to me, it seemed like a very much like a tool calling agent for the most part, which I've talked a lot about with LangGraph and LangChain. But cool that it's already kind of built into the Claude ecosystem, and like you said, it has like you have MCP capabilities there with that too. So um, pretty cool. And then I think where you're going with this is that OpenAI just also released some skills, I think recently, which was
Yeah, I think they put it inside their app almost secretly. I think I saw a tweet talking about if you ask ChatGPT what are like the skills you know, I think they had shipped like a folder within the chat agent that said like I can do these 5 or 10 things. I think one
mhm,
of the Anthropic ones that they talk about frequently is editing quote unquote workspace files. So things like PowerPoint, Excel, Word, things that, work in the workplace. So one of the main differences, though, between skills and MCP is that MCP can kind of bloat the context window at times. For each tool that an MCP server has, that can be a giant description on kind of what that tool does. And oftentimes you want to add a bunch of MCPs, but then your context window of 200,000 tokens in the latest models really fills up fast.
mhm,
So I think the difference in skills is that you have this giant text file that describes how to do something. This could be taxes, this could be, coding, et cetera, working with systems that your company uses. But the only exposure to Claude or any other AI agent that might use the skill is more or less like a 1 or 2 liner description. And so, just kind of like MCP servers and tools, the agent decides when it needs a skill or a tool. And so, if it did need a skill, it would then look at this entire text file. But if it doesn't, it would basically ignore it. So I think the context window is a bit more preserved using a skill, but if it does invoke that skill, it'll then read that entire text file. And oftentimes, I think what people are doing in setting up this skill is describing a process. So, just raw text. And two, including tools. So, for example, run this command to, run this tool or go to this URL to get this data. So it's very much not only a description of the process, but tools that the agent can use to actually pull it off. So that's kind of why I see it similar to MCP server and tools, because you could kind of almost take an MCP server, break it down into a text file, and kind of describe each tool as maybe a few steps in the process. So it's
mhm,
very interesting to me, but Anthropic released an interesting video of don't build agents, build skills. And I'll talk more about it later, but there is a paradigm shift. I'm unsure where it'll finally land. And I think their hypothesis is that coding agents are everything because coding agents have good logic and have good kind of like runtime environments to write a Python script, run it, get output. Um, with that comes how do we get these domain expertise within this coding environment or general agent. So I think
mhm.
skills are exciting. It's popular.
Yeah.
The fact that OpenAI and Anthropic have support for it means it's on a good trajectory. I'm curious where it'll land in 2026 though.
Yeah, and I've seen on the accounting and finance side, people kind of do like, oh, like on Twitter or on X, and be like, oh, Claude now with skills can create a full, 3 statement cash flow and P&L and balance sheet model, and like full like financial analysis of like a company with like just the push of a button, and it because
Hmm.
now Claude, I think one of the announcements that it had, when it was doing all the skills announcements, was also that it can build like Excel files and
Yeah.
PowerPoints, like the Microsoft suite, which of course accountants are really, and then finance people are really heavily saturated with. And so it looks really cool. Like people can like do this. Like they could say, "Hey, give me like a discounted cash flow analysis of like this loan or whatever," and it'll like pull it all together, make a presentation, and it looks really nice. So I think there's a ton of utility there too. Um, and then also right now people are using it as like, hey, reply to this message with like financial model, and I'll send you the skill. Like I'll share with you that MD
Yeah.
file. And it's like a lead magnet, of course, and
Oh, for sure.
there's a lot of snake oil out there. Like when anything new is kind of exciting and has a lot of hype around it. But I think there is a lot of use to those. And I do wonder at some point in the future if they'll like start like selling skills. Like, and maybe
Hmm.
people probably already are doing this, but like a skills marketplace of like, this is the you
Hmm.
know AI CPA audit skill or whatever, and it can like someone can buy that if they want to buy it from someone who made it. So
Yeah, that's a good
yeah, it'll be
point. I mean,
interesting. Yeah.
I think that brings up a point that I think skills are easier to share and keep up to date than MCP servers, because MCP servers take
Hmm.
so much effort to install the required software dependencies on your computer. And they've done a lot of work for one-click install to get an MCP server up and running, for example, in Cursor, but it's still a bit of a pain. So I think skills is like a more user-friendly package to get the same, almost same result as MCP server at the end of the day, but way friendlier. Anyone can write, a text file. And
Hmm.
it's also quite similar to when ChatGPT had, I think, what they called GPTs, where it's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like a profile in which to do something. And those are easy to share as well. So kind of meets in the middle of like a GPT, a MCP server, but easier to share, easier to use, and can be public, could be private, totally up to you. But it's kind of a generic surface that's kept up to date, which I think is a big deal. Oftentimes these GPTs can, not be used anymore or hard to share within the company. It feels like Anthropic is doing a decent job in packaging this up and saying, hey, go to our plugin marketplace, like add your own repository, which can have your skills. Once you add those
Hmm.
skills, I think when Claude boots up, it like downloads the latest skills and has them ready for you. So pretty cool. Hoping to see some improvements there, but we're getting into a weird time where these agents are so smart. It's like we can talk less to them. They know our intent. I think
Hmm.
this is kind of there's less wiring up of things, which I think is MCP servers, and more just like, hey, describe the process, it'll figure it out, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Cool. So that's a nice little W from Anthropic and now OpenAI on skills. What else
Hmm.
is going on with Anthropic these days? What's been going on recently?
Well, if your Twitter feed is the same as mine, which I think we do follow a similar crew of people, at least to some degree, there
Hmm.
has been controversy on Twitter about Opus 4.5. So when Opus 4.5 came out, I was singing its praises, and I still am, to be fair, but there are a lot of people that are up in arms about how quote unquote stupid Opus became. And there's a long running theory because it's not Anthropic's first rodeo when it comes to degrading Opus over time. Last time we had talked about it, they had changed the model limits because people were abusing it because it was so good. And in the process of getting their model deployed to Google and other providers, they actually had, I think, two or three minor bugs that affected the performance of their models, but it wasn't significant. And I think it really only impacted maybe 15 or 20% of users. So at the end of the day, there was a lot of hype previously about them downgrading their models because the whole theory, if you peel it back a bit, is get them hooked on it and then downgrade the model, which, in a business sense, it makes a ton of sense. Let's get them hooked and then let's cut our costs. And now they're going to still pay us.
Hmm.
But they came out and said they don't do any of that previously. They came out today and say we don't do any of that today, and we still don't. And one of the big changes that they've made is I think there's a slash feedback or a slash export command within Claude Code that allows them to look at your session. Because there was a tweet that went viral that was saying Opus 4.5 got downgraded. It is so dumb today. And the top response was someone who worked at Anthropic saying, hey, could you share that session, like slash feedback if you want to share it with me? And I believe the original poster responded to that Anthropic employee and said, oh, this is a previous session. But the employee came back and said, hey, you can resume that old session within Claude and then do a slash feedback. So I thought it was kind of funny that like the guy is saying like, hey, show me a receipt of where it went wrong. And I don't think that person ever responded. We'll have to dig up the thread, but it feels like they're on top of it. I have not felt a degradation in performance, but it's a hot topic. I think people are very sensitive around Opus and, Anthropic's usage of the model. And I don't know. I for one think they're not doing anything, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, I could see it happening, I guess, because like everyone seems like Anthropic is very like hype driven. Like if people comes out and like people like yourself and others like
Hmm.
always are just all about it, and they sign up, and I see people on Twitter being like, I'd pay $2,000 for this not to be, throttled or anything like that. So I could see it. To me, it's interesting because my tin foil hat of like I don't think Anthropic can compete in the long run with Google and with OpenAI and others.
Hmm.
Um, so like, why are they cutting costs? Like if it is true, which I think is not confirmed, but like if it is true, why are they doing that? Is it because they're trying
Hmm.
to, like, and look, cutting costs is a good thing, obviously, like that's what you need to do as a business, but like to do it this kind of way is not super transparent, and I
Yeah.
don't think it's, you know, um, yeah, it's interesting, like why they would do that because can't they just do like a pay per token plan at some point? Like you have like your base threshold, and then like you have a usage plan, right? Like you could
They
just
have that.
build on,
Yeah.
yeah, right. So like why and feel the need to dumb it down? Like maybe you just need to price it higher, and it sounds like people will be willing to pay that. So like I don't know what
Yeah.
their strategy is. Truly, it's confusing to me. But
Yeah. I think there is one hypothesis that when the model comes out, it's a big leap from the previous model, and then you get used to that change. Over
hmm,
time, you expect a certain amount from Opus or, whatever leading AI model it is. If it doesn't deliver for whatever reason, whether that is they're downgrading without telling you or they're not, but your expectations are higher, that's kind of what this poster was talking about. So to me, I feel like I know when I'm using Opus 4.5 in Claude Code, it feels really strong and has continued to feel strong. So I haven't felt that personally, but yeah, I think there are people who use it and don't use it. Maybe are less power users of Claude Code, use it less
hmm,
often, and kind of feel the difference maybe based on the problem or the prompt. So I hate to call it skill issue because it has popped up a lot. I will give it that. There are plenty of people that have complained about it. However, Anthropic is eager and open and willing to say, show me the receipts. So I think that's
hmm,
a good sign. I don't think any of this can fly under the radar given their history. I'm just hoping that Anthropic continues pushing forward on their kind of incremental release scale. Because if you look at the graph of intelligence over time, they're like the only frontier AI model that really just has a steady incline, steady slope, so to speak. And if they
hmm.
can continue to do that without, having any bugs of downgrading their model or, intentionally or unintentionally, I think they're in a really good spot. But for now, they're not in the craze I think they had last time. A bit too much attention, maybe negatively, but my guess is they're so open to feedback that it'll probably disappear in the next few weeks.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll say too on Anthropic, because I know it feels like it might be harsh on them. Um, I think they are the best. Like they have the best like taste, if that's like a thing. Where it's like if you think about like they're the first ones that did skills. They're the first ones, at least
Hmm.
to my knowledge. But like mainstream wise, at least they're the first ones that did skills. They're the first one they introduced MCP,
Hmm.
which has kind of led into like agent to agent protocol, which we haven't really seen like kick off largely, but I'm sure it's coming. So like they seem to be very much like the ones that kind of push that stuff forward and pioneer it a little bit, and then the others kind of play catch up and in
Yeah.
my opinion, do it better. But
And the coding
yeah,
CLIs too, Claude Code, that
yeah,
thing, when that
yep,
thing came
yep,
out, that was a leader and pretty much the only good one. And when
hmm,
they came out, when that product first came out, a great user experience right out of the box, which I
hmm,
think a lot of other competitors like Gemini, OpenAI, they've had a lot of catch up to do, but they've had catch up with a really good product that they could just look at and say, hey, let's
hmm,
literally replicate this while having our, somewhat differences, but they led with a really good product. And it's impressive that Anthropic is not focused on the image models per se and just driving home Claude Code and a really darn good coding agent. So, yeah, hats off to
hmm.
them. Hopefully, there's nothing that comes out in the future that says they downgraded. I think it would lose a lot of user trust because people are paying good money. But there's always a, what if in the back of your head.
Yep, yep, I agree. Cool. Okay, let's move off of Anthropic and see what else we got going on recently.
Gemini 3 Flash, your favorite company, came out with
Hmm,
their pretty fast and pretty smart models. I think the benchmarks were that Flash was like almost equal in a lot of regards to Gemini 3 Pro, which I don't know how they do it exactly, but they definitely struck a balance of intelligence and speed. And I think most importantly is cost, where Google is really driving home the TPUs, which I think Anthropic is actually buying in large scale. So yeah, pretty awesome model release.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool. And I saw the benchmarks like look pretty good for being a cheaper model,
Yeah,
because it's
I
kind
think
of, yeah.
one note that I was very interested in the benchmark commentary. What I saw online was that the hallucination rate of Gemini 3 Flash is actually pretty high.
Hmm.
What that means is the model is definitely, come up with its own facts, but it turns out it's actually scoring high in these benchmarks. And so I think the analysis from that benchmark of hallucinations was saying the model almost hallucinates its way to an answer in its reasoning thought. And when O3 was around, the OpenAI model, I think it also scored similarly with high intelligence, but high hallucinations, given the fact that it also had a deep kind of chain of thought and reasoning. So maybe in the middle of its chain of thought, it would be off course and kind of quote unquote making stuff up. But when it makes stuff up, it has good reasoning and is able to get to the right answer. So it's almost like an indirect cheat to say it hallucinates a lot, makes up, wrong statements, but it thinks so well that it's able to like think itself out of these wrong statements and get to the right answer. So kind of interesting, but I think Google will probably make that better in the next model release. But a good call out because all these benchmarks measure different things like recall in a large context window, hallucinations, raw intelligence, coding ability. There's literally so many benchmarks, and this one was a unique one saying high hallucinations but high intelligence. That almost works together as a power factor. So pretty
Hmm.
interesting.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, to hallucinate your way into an answer, it sounds kind
Yeah.
of, that's what gets people kind of like iffy on AI, in some ways.
Yeah, that
Like,
was a
I don't
big
know if I
deal
like that.
earlier.
Yeah. The hallucinations. Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. What else we got shaken?
We have a recent supply chain attack. So we've talked about this, not this one in specific, but we've talked about this for our bingo card when a large scale AI hack would happen. And so this
Hmm.
one, I think, was codenamed uh, SHA1, so SHA1 Hulud, HULUD, the second coming. So a pretty verbose name, but what this was there's a certain set of JavaScript packages on the npm package registry that were infected. What that means is if you installed this package locally on your developer machine, it would then try to extract secrets from your environment. So oftentimes in a coding project, you'll have like a .env file. I believe what these kind of malformed hacking or hacked libraries would do is take a look at your computer, try to find any of these important credentials, for example, a Gemini API key, an Amazon API key, upload that to a public repository on your own account and have a specific identifier such that the attacker would just go to github.com, search for a specific identifier like, SHA-1 Halud the second coming. And anyone who is infected would then pop up in the search. They would take your API keys or whatever that popped up and save it and, use those as a malicious actor. So I think there was like over 200 packages affected. The one that I was personally concerned about was PostHog. So PostHog is an analytics company that a lot of kind of like indie or small companies, I'd say medium to small companies use for analytics. So you can think of Google Analytics, but a little bit better and kind of open source and more pricing friendly. So that one was affected because one of their dependencies was affected by this hack. And so they had published a statement on Twitter saying, hey, we published our libraries today. We realize there's malicious code. We've removed those versions, but if you installed them already, you're in trouble, as in get those off your machine stat. And I was concerned because I upgrade my dependencies for both my React Native project and my web app decently often, probably more than I need to. And I thought, oh crap. So I took those versions in this kind of disclosure article, which is affected, popped into ChatGPT or Claude Code and said, "Hey, look at my current installed packages. Look at the ones that are flagged as malware. Do I have any of those?" And thankfully, it said no. But I think when the article came out, there was at least 20,000 like repositories that were affected. So it's a big deal. And honestly, I think with a lot of
Hmm.
these hacks, a lot of the impact comes later downstream. It's not day one, day two. It's how can they find these keys and figure out which ones they can extract the most value out of. And some people probably didn't even know they got hacked. So a
Hmm.
pretty significant event, and I expect this to happen more and more. Sadly, we're getting into the territory of AI doing a lot more. You know, it's a lot smarter, but it does a lot of the work for you. So oftentimes you can miss some of these things, and I imagine this is going to become much more frequent.
Yeah. I guess for the maybe the lay person, what benefit, like when you get hacked, and a lot of times people think of like you steal someone's, like crypto wallet or something like that, where like they're actually stealing money from your account. Doesn't sound like that's what this does. Like they can take your API keys, but like the benefit to them is that they can just use your API key for free while you get billed. Is that the idea, or like what's the
Kind of.
long
I
term
mean,
play?
yeah, I think the hack specifically kind of took all the contents of your secrets. So it could be API keys, it could be passwords. It's just kind of a
Okay.
dump all for any secret credentials. So I think what they do is they look at where it came from, whether that's like an Amazon API key, a secret password to get into an admin account, anything that they could get their hands on and then extract value out of it. So I think that's part of it, but it's hard to say what they collected.
Yeah. Okay. No, I was curious. Yeah, it's those packages are, super complicated, and people just, I certainly just go, I use Python, so it's like pip install, blah blah blah, and just installs it,
Yeah.
and
Don't think about it.
don't think twice. Yeah, right. Don't think twice. And it's easy to misspell something, or
Mhm.
you know, like I think I've heard of in the Python world about how there was like a package that like, it was like the word had an L in it, but like the right spelling had two L's, but then someone made it like a malicious package that just had one L and was like trying to bank on people misspelling it or something like that. I can't remember the exact story, but yeah, it's a scary world out there. You gotta be careful.
Yeah.
Um, cool. Okay, so let's wrap it up here. I think the other news that we wanted to chat about is Cursor. My favorite IDE these days. They released a really cool new feature that I haven't been able to use, full disclosure, but I'm excited to look at it, I guess, and be more involved in it. Is they have like a visual editor for like editing your front end, if because they do all the back end code and all that, agentic coding assistant, but now you can have a way to kind of view it within their system, which is pretty cool. And then they also released a debug mode. So I guess what's the details on these, Brad? I guess let's start with the visual editor one. Um,
Yeah, it
sounds
looks
like it's
like you can open your
a drag
website
and
within
drop.
Cursor and it's a
Hmm.
browser and you can kind of drag and drop certain UI elements. It'll then go figure out in the code how to update that. And I believe it's based on Tailwind, which is kind of the most popular CSS framework out there. I'm not sure if it works on non-Tailwind. Since it's AI, I assume it does, but I think a lot of their examples are with Tailwind. But yeah, basically, if you want to center this text, move this around, it's now much easier. And I think it enables both developers and non-developers to say, I'm going to go look at our marketing site and change a few things. I'm changing the visual side, but it's under the hood, changing the coding side. And since AI is so darn good now, this actually makes a whole lot of sense. So hats off to them on that. If you're into front end design and you want to learn more, or you purely just want to change things without coding, changing the font, changing the positioning, changing the style, all that is very much uh, made easier by this kind of visual browser that allows you to change things. So really, really cool. I'm glad Cursor is stepping into a different role here. Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini have not shipped anything like this. So I think Cursor exists in that sweet spot of building out these unique products that really bring the industry forward, where other companies are kind of catching up to like, the CLI war or the general model war. Cursor doesn't have to worry as much about that. Although they do create their own models, they still create some cool stuff. So
Hmm.
hats off to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Pretty cool. Awesome. All right. Well, should we wrap it up there, Brad, with our bookmarks?
Yeah, I guess last note is the debug mode, which I
Oh,
haven't got to
sorry, I
use
jumped ahead.
personally, but when I read their kind of marketing article, the quick spiel is, as an engineer, when things go wrong, and they often go wrong, it's how do you figure out what exactly is going wrong and where to have the fix. Oftentimes that means adding print statements or log statements to say, hey, the code got down this far, and
Hmm.
this is kind of the variable value. So we can understand kind of what happens at runtime. What the debug mode does is it kind of does that for you. So it takes a look at your code, adds a bunch of log statements, and then allows you to actually run kind of the debug server. So for example, in Python, you'd be kind of running your web server. In Node, you'd be running kind of the Node server. So you're running kind of the back end software. Then you would go recreate the issue. So maybe you navigate to a web page, fill out a form, click enter. Then it would see all the logs that are being produced, but it'd be running the server for you. So there's essentially a terminal within Cursor that's able to run your web server and look at the logs. Based
Mm,
on the logs that happen, it'll then figure out what exactly is happening at runtime and then propose the right fix. To me, again, they exist in this mode where they can build cool stuff. This sounds pretty useful. I almost do this indirectly. So it's like packaging up what I would do in my day to day into a mode. I'm not sure how much I would use it, and different languages have different amounts and ease of debugging. I think Python, JavaScript, TypeScript are pretty easy. When we talk about more compiled things like Swift, Mac OS app, Apple apps, this would not work at all. So
right.
kind of a mixed bag, but I think this is the right direction. They brought plan mode, a few months ago. Excellent addition.
Mm-hmm.
They have,
Yep.
visual editor in the browser. They have debug mode. I'm not sure what's next. They brought, full end front and center reviewing, which was pretty cool. So they're clearly building a ton of stuff based on talking to people. So yeah,
Yeah.
excited to see what's on the roadmap. I think this is an obvious one. I'm not sure how much I would use it personally, but if you're in kind of the back end infrastructure space, I think it'd probably work out pretty well for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Maybe the next foray is into like deployments or something like that, like
Honestly, could
hosting.
be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure they have a lot of stuff
Um,
cooking up right now.
yeah. Well, cool. Awesome. All right. Now let's jump into bookmarks. I jumped ahead of you forgot about the debug mode. So I guess, do you want to go first on the bookmark, Brad?
Yeah, sure. So mine is one that I talked about earlier. It's Anthropic's YouTube video on the AI Engineer channel, which I think is an excellent resource for people who are not subscribed. This video is titled "Don't Build Agents, Build Skills Instead" by two of the Anthropic engineers. And again, we've had 2025 being the year of agents. They're proposing the next form factor is skills because these agents are so well equipped. Creating a better agent doesn't really make sense anymore. Like giving it the tools, it's more describing what you want and having that being shareable, like we talked about. So it's a 16-minute video. Very interesting. These are obviously smart people who are in the weeds of AI every day building this out in Anthropic. So I'll link in the show notes. Excellent video. Please watch if you're interested.
Cool. I was trying to find the bookmark, or I wanted to share one. Just, it was really funny. It was a video I saw on X, and it said, like, think about this before you use AI. And it was like a video and someone like screen sharing. They're typing into like Claude or Open or ChatGPT. I can't remember what it was. And it was like center this div, but then it had like a like infographic that showed like the request went to the server, that went to like the like processor, and the processor did all this like calculation and all that kind of stuff, and like it sent it back, this whole like long running cycle of like how the AI model works. And it just
Mm-hmm.
like came back with like just a little bit of a code tweak, which is completely how I use AI as like a layperson. I'm just
Yeah.
lazy. I'm like, how do I center this? And it's just funny. But I couldn't find the link to share that. So what I was going to share, and what I did actually have bookmarked, is actually another YouTube video, funnily enough, and it's from LangChain. And they have a video. They do really good like deep dive videos. They'll have like their founders just get on a camera for like an hour and like talk through stuff. But they did a building and observing a deep agent for email triage, which I want to take a
Hmm.
look at because, one of the things in the accounting world that accountants often get a lot of flack for is like not responding to emails. Like you'll hear people complain about that all the time. I think I mentioned that, that they just can't get a hold of their CPA. And I think some of that is like behavior, but then some of that too, I think is volume and overwhelm. And so I think that's one of those areas where like AI can be super useful. Like I'd love, if I had my own CPA firm, to have like a 24-hour response window. Like if a client sends me an email, I'll
Mm-hmm.
respond within 24 hours, even if it's just like, hey, I received your email. But like to be able to have that kind of
Better than
like,
nothing.
yeah, right. But like I don't want to respond to every email. Like I'll get emails from vendors, I'll get emails from, non-clients. I don't need to have that same kind of, TLC with. So you probably need an agent to kind of help figure that out or
Mm-hmm.
work through that. So yeah, I thought it was an interesting video. I'm gonna check it out and see what they say. So
Nice.
cool. Awesome. All right. Well, let's wrap it up there, Brad. Good stuff. Great year for 2025. I don't know how many
Oh yeah.
episodes we did, but pretty awesome. And I guess for our next one in 2026, we should revisit our 2025 bingo card for the
Yeah,
last
we
time and
should.
see how it shook out. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Because,
create a new one too.
yeah, and make a new one. Yeah, absolutely. can't believe we're already saying that because
Awesome.
I feel like not that long ago we made that bingo card. But
I know.
I guess
I know. We
guess
need
it
to
was
create
the
an
game of the year.
infographic with Gemini or the Nano Banana Pro and just see how that ends up. I think it'd be fun to share.
It's a great name, by the way, Nano Banana. I think it's fun to
I
say.
know.
Cool. All right. Well,
Cool.
good stuff, Brad. And enjoy the holidays, everybody. And we'll see you next
Yeah.
time.
Awesome. See ya.
See ya. Thank you for listening to the Breaking Brothers podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you may be listening from. Also, be sure to subscribe to our show and YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. Thanks, and take care. All views and opinions by Bradley and Bennett are solely their own and unaffiliated with any external parties.